In a bustling university nestled in the heart of a vibrant city, there was a department renowned for its challenging mathematics program. This wasn't just any ordinary institution. It was a place where students with dreams of becoming engineers, physicists, and mathematicians came to test their limits. Among the faculty members, one name stood out: Dr. Harold Grayson. Known for his sharp wit, towering intellect, and intimidating demeanor, he was both admired and feared by his students. His reputation as a brilliant but ruthless professor preceded him, and many students walked into his classroom with a mix of awe and trepidation. Dr. Grayson prided himself on pushing his students to their absolute limits. He believed that discomfort bred growth, and he often used unorthodox methods to keep his class on edge. Whether it was calling someone out mid-lecture for not paying attention or assigning problems so complex they seemed unsolvable, he thrived on creating an atmosphere of tension. To him, this was how true learning happened, under pressure. But, while most students scrambled to keep up with his demands, there was one student who rarely caught his eye. Her name was Eleanor Carter, though everyone called her Ellie. She was a quiet, unassuming young woman who preferred to sit at the back of the lecture hall away from the spotlight. Unlike her peers who eagerly raised their hands to answer questions or debated passionately during discussions, Ellie kept to herself. She didn't participate in group projects unless asked directly, nor did she volunteer answers during class. Her presence was subtle, almost invisible, blending seamlessly into the sea of faces that filled the room each day. Ellie had transferred to the university midway through the semester, coming from a small liberal arts college where teaching styles were far gentler. At first glance, she appeared like any other newcomer trying to adapt to a more competitive environment. But what set Ellie apart was her mind, a razor-sharp intellect hidden behind her reserved exterior. While others scribbled furiously to keep up with Dr. Grayson's rapid-fire lectures, Ellie jotted down notes with ease, absorbing every detail without breaking a sweat. Equations that left others scratching their heads made perfect sense to her, and concepts that took hours of study for her classmates came naturally to her. Despite her obvious talent, Ellie went unnoticed by Dr. Grayson. In fact, he barely registered her existence. Like many professors, he tended to focus on the loudest voices in the room, the ones who dominated discussions or sought validation through participation. Ellie's silence made her fade into the background, and Dr. Grayson assumed she was simply another average student struggling to keep up. What he failed to realize was that Ellie wasn't just keeping up. She was leagues ahead of the rest of the class. Ellie's quiet nature wasn't born out of shyness or insecurity. On the contrary, she was deeply confident in her abilities, but she saw no reason to draw unnecessary attention to herself. Growing up, she had always been different from her peers. Homeschooled by her parents, both accomplished mathematicians, Ellie had spent her childhood immersed in numbers and theories. By the time she was a teenager, she was already assisting her parents with research papers and solving problems that baffled seasoned academics. Math wasn't just a subject for Ellie, it was a language she spoke fluently, a world where she felt completely at home. When she decided to attend university, Ellie chose to enroll in a smaller school initially, hoping to ease into the transition. However, after 2 years, she realized she wanted to challenge herself further. That's when she applied to the prestigious university, determined to push her boundaries and explore new horizons. Yet even here, among some of the brightest minds in the country, Ellie remained humble. She didn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone. Not yet, anyway. As the weeks went by, Ellie continued to fly under the radar. She attended every lecture, completed every assignment with precision, and aced every exam without breaking a sweat. Her classmates occasionally noticed her perfect scores posted on the bulletin board outside the lecture hall, but they dismissed them as flukes or chalked them up to luck. After all, how could someone so quiet possibly excel in such a demanding field? Surely she must have stumbled upon the right answers by chance. Little did they know, Ellie's brilliance ran deeper than anyone imagined. And little did Dr. Grayson know that his assumption about her mediocrity would soon be shattered, in a way that would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about his students. For now, though, Ellie remained content to stay in the shadows, letting her work speak for itself. But sometimes even the quietest voices can't stay silent forever, and when they finally do emerge, the impact can be extraordinary. The lecture hall buzzed with the usual hum of activity as students settled into their seats, notebooks open and pens poised. Dr. Harold Grayson stood at the front of the room, his tall frame commanding attention as he adjusted his glasses and scanned the faces before him. Today's topic was advanced differential equations, a subject notorious for its complexity and the mental gymnastics it required. Most students dreaded these lessons, but Dr. Grayson seemed to relish them. To him, this wasn't just teaching. It was a performance, an opportunity to showcase his intellect and assert his dominance over the class. As he began writing on the board, his chalk moving swiftly across the surface, the room grew quieter. The equations he scribbled were intricate, layered with symbols and variables that seemed almost alien to the untrained eye. For many students, keeping up felt like trying to decipher a foreign language in real time. Some furiously copied down, every line hoping to make sense of it later. Others stared blankly, their frustration mounting as they struggled to follow along. But Dr. Grayson didn't slow down for anyone. If anything, he seemed to speed up, as if daring his students to keep pace. Midway through the lecture, he paused dramatically, turning to face the class. His piercing gaze swept over the rows of students, lingering briefly on those who appeared particularly lost. A satisfied smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth. This was his favorite part, the moment when he could single someone out, turn the spotlight onto them, and watch them squirm under the pressure. It wasn't enough for him to simply teach. He needed to test, to challenge, to push until he found the breaking point. And today, he had already decided who his target would be. His eyes landed on Ellie Carter, sitting quietly in her usual spot near the back of the room. She was bent over her notebook, her pen gliding smoothly across the page as she jotted down notes. Unlike her peers, she showed no signs of confusion or distress. Her calm demeanor irritated Dr. Grayson more than he cared to admit. He couldn't understand how someone so seemingly disengaged could possibly grasp the material. Surely, she must be faking it, pretending to understand while secretly floundering like everyone else. "Ms. Carter," he called out abruptly, his voice cutting through the quiet murmur of the classroom. Heads turned and all eyes fell on Ellie. Startled by the sudden attention, she looked up from her notebook, her expression calm but questioning. "Yes, Professor," she replied softly, her tone polite yet firm. Dr. Grayson stepped away from the board, crossing his arms as he fixed her with a steely gaze. "Since you seem so focused," he said, his words dripping with sarcasm, "perhaps you'd like to demonstrate your understanding to the rest of us." He gestured toward the board behind him, where a particularly convoluted equation loomed large. "Come up here and solve this problem for the class." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room as students exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone knew what this meant. Dr. Grayson was setting a trap. The equation on the board wasn't just difficult. It was designed to trip people up, to expose their weaknesses and leave them floundering. Many had fallen victim to this tactic before, stumbling over their words or freezing entirely as the professor watched with thinly veiled amusement. No one envied Ellie in that moment. Ellie hesitated for only a fraction of a second before rising from her seat. There was no hesitation in her movements, no trace of fear or uncertainty. She walked steadily to the front of the room, her steps measured and deliberate. As she picked up a piece of chalk, the entire class held its breath, waiting to see how she would respond. Would she crumble under the weight of Dr. Grayson's expectations, or would she rise to the occasion? Dr. Grayson leaned casually against his desk, his posture relaxed, but his expression smug. He fully expected Ellie to falter, to reveal herself as just another student overwhelmed by his brilliance. But as she began solving the equation, something remarkable happened. With each stroke of the chalk, she unraveled the problem step by step, explaining her reasoning aloud in a clear and concise manner. Her voice carried confidence, and her explanations were so lucid that even the most confused students found themselves nodding along. What made it even more impressive was that Ellie didn't stop there. Midway through the solution, she paused and offered an alternative approach, one that simplified the process significantly. Instead of relying on the lengthy method Dr. Grayson had outlined, she proposed a shortcut that cut straight to the heart of the problem. The room fell silent as she worked through this new path, her logic flawless and her execution flawless. By the time she finished, the equation was solved perfectly, leaving no room for doubt. Ellie turned to face the class, her expression calm and composed. "That's one way to do it," she said simply, then added, "but I think this method might save some time." For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint sound of chalk dust falling from Ellie's fingers. Then, slowly, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Students glanced at each other, their expressions ranging from shock to admiration. Even Dr. Grayson, who prided himself on maintaining an air of superiority, looked momentarily taken aback. His smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. But Dr. Grayson wasn't one to let his guard down for long. Recovering quickly, he cleared his throat and nodded curtly. "Well done, Ms. Carter," he said, though his tone lacked warmth. "It seems you've managed to surprise us all." He turned back to the board, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Ellie returned to her seat without a word, her poise unwavering. As the lecture resumed, whispers erupted around the room. "Did you see that?" One student hissed to another. "She totally owned him." Another muttered, "How does she even know all that stuff? She acts like it's nothing." Ellie ignored the chatter, focusing instead on her notes. But deep down, she felt a small spark of satisfaction. For the first time, she realized that staying quiet didn't mean staying invisible, and sometimes actions spoke louder than words. Meanwhile, Dr. Grayson couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered after Ellie's demonstration. He had intended to embarrass her, to prove a point about the dangers of complacency. Instead, he had been the one left humbled. And while he wouldn't admit it openly, he couldn't help but wonder, who exactly was Eleanor Carter? And what else was she capable of? The lecture hall slowly emptied as the class came to an end, students gathering their books and notebooks with a mix of relief and lingering excitement. The air was still buzzing with whispered conversations about what had just unfolded. Ellie's flawless solution to Dr. Grayson's seemingly impossible problem had left an indelible mark on everyone present. For most, it was a moment of awe, a rare occasion when someone not only met but exceeded the professor's lofty standards. Yet for Ellie, it was simply another day, another challenge overcome without fanfare or drama. As she packed her things into her bag, Ellie felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she found herself face to face with Mia Rodriguez, one of the more outgoing students in the class. Mia had always struck Ellie as friendly, but distant. They hadn't exchanged more than a few polite words since the semester began. Now, however, Mia's eyes sparkled with curiosity and admiration. "Hey, Ellie," Mia said, her tone warm and eager. "That was incredible back there. Seriously, I've never seen anyone shut Dr. Grayson down like that. How did you even do it?" Ellie paused, slightly taken aback by the directness of the question. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not in such a personal way. Still, Mia's genuine enthusiasm made it hard to brush her off. "I just followed the steps," Ellie replied hesitantly, her voice soft but steady. "It wasn't anything special." Mia raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "Not anything special? You made that equation look like child's play. And that shortcut you came up with? Genius. Where did you learn all that?" For a moment, Ellie hesitated. She wasn't accustomed to talking about herself, let alone revealing details about her background. But something about Mia's earnestness put her at ease. Taking a deep breath, she decided to share a little of her story. "Well," Ellie began, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening too closely, "I was homeschooled growing up. My parents are both mathematicians, so math has kind of been my life for as long as I can remember. They taught me a lot of advanced stuff early on, and I guess I've always had a knack for seeing patterns and connections in equations. Mia's eyes widened in amazement. Wait, seriously? Your parents are mathematicians? That's amazing. No wonder you're so good at this. Ellie nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Yeah, I spent a lot of time helping them with research projects when I was younger. It wasn't formal schooling or anything, but I learned a lot. When I decided to come here, I thought it would be a chance to try something different, to see how I fit in with other students who are passionate about math. But you're not just fitting in, Mia interjected, her tone almost reverent. You're blowing everyone out of the water. Why don't you say anything in class? If I were you, I'd be shouting it from the rooftops. Ellie chuckled softly, shaking her head. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Math isn't about showing off, it's about solving problems and understanding concepts. Besides, I'm not really comfortable being the center of attention. I prefer to stay in the background. Mia frowned slightly, as if struggling to comprehend Ellie's perspective. But you could inspire people. Don't you want others to know what you're capable of? Ellie considered the question for a moment before responding. Maybe someday, she said thoughtfully. But right now I'm happy doing my own thing. If people notice, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Looking up, Ellie saw Dr. Grayson standing nearby, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. He had clearly overheard part of their discussion, though whether intentionally or accidentally was unclear. Without a word, he turned and walked away, disappearing down the hallway. Ellie watched him go, a flicker of unease passing through her. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last she'd hear from him. Word of Ellie's performance spread quickly throughout the department. By the next day, it seemed like everyone knew her name. Students who had barely acknowledged her presence before now greeted her with smiles and nods. Some approached her after class to ask questions about assignments or request help with difficult problems. Others simply stared in awe, whispering among themselves whenever she passed by. While Ellie appreciated the newfound respect, she also found it overwhelming. The sudden attention disrupted the quiet routine she had grown accustomed to, forcing her to navigate a social landscape she had deliberately avoided. Dr. Grayson, meanwhile, was grappling with his own emotions. On the surface, he maintained his usual authoritative demeanor, delivering lectures with the same intensity and precision as always. But beneath the facade, he was simmering with frustration, and perhaps a touch of jealousy. He prided himself on being the smartest person in the room, the one everyone looked up to and feared. Yet Ellie's display of brilliance had challenged that perception, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. Determined to regain control, Dr. Grayson resolved to test Ellie further. He couldn't let her slip back into obscurity, not after what had happened. If she truly was as talented as she appeared, then he needed to push her harder, to see just how far she could go. And if she faltered under the pressure, well, that would serve as a reminder to everyone, including himself, that no one was infallible. A few days later, during another lecture, Dr. Grayson announced a university-wide mathematics competition sponsored by a renowned tech company. The event was designed to identify promising young mathematics. 他们的对话被一阵脚步声打断了。抬头一看， Ellie 看到 Dr. Grayson 站在附近，双臂交叉，表情难以琢磨。他显然无意中听到了他们谈话的一部分，但他是有意还是无意听到的并不清楚。他一言不发地转身驰开，消失在走廊尽头。Ellie 看着他驰去的背影，心中掠过一丝不安。他有种预感，这不会是他最后一次找他麻烦。关于 Ellie 表现的消息很快在整个系里传开了。到第二天，似乎所有人都知道了他的名字。那些以前几乎没注意到他的学生们，现在见到他都微笑着点头打招呼。有些人下课后会找他请教作业问题或寻求帮助解决难题，还有一些人则在他经过时窃窃私语，满脸敬畏。虽然 Ellie 感激这份新获得的尊重，但她也觉得有些不知所措。突如其来的关注打乱了她习惯的安静生活。 迫使他不得不应对一个他可以回避的社交环境。与此同时，Dr. Grayson 也在处理自己的情绪。表面上，他依然保持着一贯的权威态度，讲课依旧充满激情和精准。但在表面之下，他内心充满了挫败感，甚至还有一丝嫉妒。他一直以自己是房间里最聪明的人而自豪，是所有人仰望和畏惧的对象。然而，Ellie 的出色表现挑战了这一认知，让他感到暴露和脆弱。为了重新掌控局面， Dr. Grayson 决定进一步考验 Ellie。他不能让她在那件事之后再次默默无闻。如果他真的想看起来那么有才华，那么他需要给他更大的压力，看看他究竟能走多远。如果他在压力下失手，那将提醒所有人，包括他自己，没有人是完美无缺的。几天后，在另一次讲座上， Dr. Grayson 宣布了一项由知名科技公司赞助的全校数学竞赛。这项赛事旨在发掘有前途的年轻数学家，并为获胜者提供丰厚的实习机会。尽管比赛对所有学生开放，但大家都心知肚明，这是 Dr. Grayson 针对 Ellie 设下的又一次挑战。他希望通过公开竞争证明，即使像 Ellie 这样看似天才的学生，也需要在他的规则下接受检验。消息公布后，教室里一片窃窃私语。一些学生兴奋地讨论着参赛的可能性，而另一些人则投向 Ellie 复杂的眼神。有人羡慕她的能力，认为她是夺冠热门，也有人怀疑她是否能在更大的舞台上继续保持冷静。而对于 Ellie 来说，这次竞赛即使机遇也是负担。她知道，无论结果如何，这都将改变她在大学里的生活轨迹。当天晚上， Ellie 独自坐在图书馆的一角，面前摊开着几本厚重的数学书。她并没有急着报名参赛，而是陷入了沉思。一方面，她明白这是一个展示自己能力、打破刻板印象的机会；另一方面，她担心比赛会带来更多不必要的关注，甚至可能成为 Dr. Grayson 进一步刁难她的借口。更重要的是，她不确定自己是否真的想参与这样的竞争。对她而言，数学从来不是为了硬的张生活证明什么，而是一种纯粹的乐趣和探索。正当他犹豫不决时，米娅出现在他身旁。米娅轻声说道，我听说你还没决定要不要参加比赛。艾莉抬起头，勉强笑了笑。我在考虑。米娅坐下来，认真地看着他。你知道吗？我觉得你应该去。这不是为了 Dr. Grayson， 也不是为了任何人，这是为你自己。你有这个实力，为什么不是你？艾莉叹了口气。我只是不想让事情变得更复杂。我已经习惯了低调的生活，突然间所有人都撑着我看，这种感觉并不好。我懂你的意思，米娅点头回应，但有时候呢，低调并不是最好的选择。你有机会激励其他人，特别是那些像你一样安静却有能力的学生。如果你赢了，你会让他们知道，做自己也可以很强大。艾莉沉默了一会儿，细细品味着米娅的话。或许她说的对，也许是时候迈出书挂去，用自己的方式去影响世界了。想到这里，艾莉终于露出了坚定的微笑。好吧，她低声说，我会试试看。从那天起，艾莉开始全力以赴准备比赛。她利用课余时间钻研复杂的理论，设计创新的解题方法。每当遇到困难时，她都会想起米娅的鼓励，以及那些默默支持她的同学们。渐渐的，她意识到，这场比赛的意义已超越了胜负本身。它不仅是一次自我突破的机会，更是她向世界宣告自身价值的舞台。而在不远处， Dr. Grayson 正密切注视着这一切，等待着最终对决的到来。The weeks leading up to the university-wide mathematics competition were a whirlwind of activity for Ellie. While most students dove into preparation with varying degrees of enthusiasm, Ellie approached it with her characteristic calm and focus. She didn't shout about her intentions or boast about her abilities. Instead, she worked quietly, methodically honing her skills in solitude. Her days were filled with long hours at the library, poring over advanced textbooks, solving practice problems, and experimenting with new approaches to familiar concepts. To anyone who asked, she simply said she was seeing how things went. But those who knew her well could tell that beneath her composed exterior lay a fierce determination. Dr. Grayson, however, wasn't content to let Ellie prepare in peace. He seemed to have taken a personal interest in her progress, or rather, in ensuring she didn't get too comfortable. During lectures, he would often direct subtle jabs her way, questioning whether someone so reserved could truly handle the pressures of such a high-stakes event. Competitions like this require confidence, he remarked one day, his eyes briefly flicking toward Ellie before returning to the board. It's not enough to solve equations on paper. You need to assert yourself, to prove your worth under scrutiny. Ellie didn't respond directly to these comments, but they didn't go unnoticed either. Each remark only strengthened her resolve. If Dr. Grayson thought he could rattle her, he was sorely mistaken. For Ellie, this wasn't about proving anything to him, or even to herself. It was about embracing the challenge on her own terms, showing that brilliance didn't always come wrapped in bravado. As the competition drew closer, the atmosphere around campus grew electric. Posters advertising the event lined the hallways, and buzz about potential contenders spread like wildfire. Some students formed study groups, pooling their knowledge and brainstorming strategies. Others sought advice from professors or older peers who had competed in similar events. Ellie, meanwhile, remained largely independent. Though Mia occasionally checked in to offer encouragement, Ellie preferred to work alone, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of her thoughts. Despite her preference for solitude, Ellie couldn't escape the growing attention surrounding her participation. Rumors about her past achievements began circulating among students. How she had assisted her parents with research projects as a teenager. How she solved complex problems faster than seasoned academics. These stories painted her as something of a prodigy, though Ellie herself never confirmed or denied them. When pressed, she simply shrugged and said, "I've just been lucky to learn from good teachers." One afternoon, as Ellie sat in a corner of the library working through a particularly challenging optimization problem, she was approached by another student, a senior named Daniel, who had earned a reputation as one of the top math minds in TU, the department. Daniel was known for his sharp wit and competitive streak, and many considered him a favorite to win the upcoming contest. Yet when he pulled up a chair across from Ellie, his demeanor was surprisingly friendly. "Mind if I join? You?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat. Ellie glanced up, surprised but not unwelcoming. "Sure," she replied, sliding her notebook slightly to give him space. For a while they worked side by side in companionable silence, each absorbed in their respective tasks. Eventually, Daniel broke the quiet. "So, I heard you're entering the competition," he said casually, his tone conversational rather than confrontational. Ellie nodded. "Yeah, I figured I'd give it a shot." Daniel smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You know, I've seen your work. That little display in Dr. Grayson's class? Impressive stuff. You're definitely going to be tough competition." Ellie raised an eyebrow, unsure whether to take his words as a compliment or a veiled threat. "Thanks, I guess," she said, cautiously. "No, seriously," Daniel continued, his expression softening. "I don't say that lightly. Most people crack under Grayson's pressure, but you didn't even blink. That takes guts and skill." Ellie felt a small warmth bloom in her chest at the unexpected praise. "I'm just doing my best," she said modestly. "We'll see how it goes." Daniel studied her for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. "You know, I think we underestimate people like you sometimes. Quiet doesn't mean weak, and humble doesn't mean incapable. Maybe that's why Grayson picked you for his little test, to remind himself that talent comes in all forms." His words resonated deeply with Ellie. She had spent much of her life feeling overlooked because she chose not to draw attention to herself. Yet here was someone acknowledging her strength without expecting her to change who she was. It was refreshing and empowering. "You might be right," Ellie admitted with a faint smile. But at the end of the day, I'm just here to do what I love. If other people notice, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. Daniel chuckled, clearly impressed by her perspective. Well, whatever happens, I'm glad you're in the running. It's always more fun when there's someone worth competing against. With that, he stood up, offering her a quick nod before heading off to his next class. Ellie watched him go, a sense of quiet confidence settling over her. She hadn't entered the competition seeking validation or recognition, but moments like this reminded her why stepping out of the shadows wasn't entirely a bad thing. Meanwhile, Dr. Grayson continued to monitor Ellie's progress from afar. His initial irritation at being outshone had evolved into something more complicated, a mix of begrudging respect and lingering skepticism. Part of him wanted to believe that Ellie's performance in class had been a fluke, a stroke of luck that wouldn't hold up under greater scrutiny. But another part of him, the part that prided itself on spotting true genius, couldn't ignore the evidence mounting before him. One evening, after grading a set of particularly challenging assignments, Dr. Grayson found himself staring at Ellie's submission. She had not only answered every question correctly, but had also included detailed notes explaining alternative methods for solving several problems. The level of insight and creativity displayed in her work left him momentarily speechless. For the first time, he allowed himself to entertain the possibility that Ellie wasn't just talented, she was extraordinary. Yet instead of feeling inspired, Dr. Grayson felt uneasy. If Ellie succeeded in the competition, it would force him to confront his own biases and assumptions about success and intelligence, and if she failed, well, he wasn't sure which outcome he dreaded more. As the final days before the competition ticked away, Ellie found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From her childhood surrounded by numbers to her decision to step into the spotlight, every choice had led her to this moment. Whether she won or lost, she knew she had already achieved something remarkable. She had stayed true to herself while proving that quiet voices could still command attention. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was victory enough. The day of the university-wide mathematics competition arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Students from various departments had gathered in the grand auditorium, a spacious hall adorned with banners celebrating innovation and academic excellence. Rows of seats stretched toward the stage where a panel of esteemed judges, including representatives from the sponsoring tech company, sat ready to evaluate the contestants. The stakes were high. The winner would receive not only recognition, but also a coveted internship opportunity that could shape their future career. Ellie stood at the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed as she surveyed the scene. Despite her calm exterior, she couldn't deny the flutter of nerves in her stomach. This wasn't like solving problems in the quiet solitude of her room, or even tackling Dr. Grayson's challenges in class. Today, all eyes would be on her, and dozens of other competitors who were just as determined to win. For someone who preferred blending into the background, the thought was daunting. Mia appeared beside her, clutching a notebook and flashing an encouraging smile. "You've got this, Ellie," she said firmly. "Just breathe and do what you always do." Ellie nodded, grateful for Mia's unwavering support. "Thanks," she replied softly. "I'll try not to overthink it." As the event began, the host, a cheerful professor known for his enthusiasm, welcomed everyone and outlined the rules. The competition consisted of 3 rounds, each progressively more difficult than the last. In the first round, participants would solve individual problems within a strict time limit. Those who advanced would then move on to group challenges requiring teamwork and collaboration. Finally, the top contenders would face off in a final round, focused on real-world applications of mathematics, designing solutions to practical problems posed by the judges. When the first round commenced, Ellie found herself seated alongside dozens of other students at long tables scattered across the auditorium. Each contestant received a sealed envelope containing their set of problems. As soon as the timer started, the room erupted into a flurry of activity. Pencils scratched against paper, calculators clicked, and pages turned rapidly as everyone raced to complete their tasks. Ellie opened her envelope and scanned the questions. They were challenging, no doubt, but nothing she hadn't encountered before. She worked steadily, her mind moving quickly through each problem without hesitation. Around her, some students groaned in frustration or scribbled furiously, clearly struggling to keep up. But Ellie remained focused, blocking out distractions and trusting her instincts. By the time the timer rang, signaling the end of the round, Ellie had finished every question with confidence. As the proctors collected the answer sheets, she noticed Daniel sitting a few seats away, looking equally composed. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod, acknowledging their shared determination. It was a silent moment of mutual respect, one that reminded Ellie she wasn't alone in this journey. The results of the first round were announced shortly afterward, and Ellie's name appeared among those advancing to the next stage. So did Daniel's, along with several other familiar faces from the department. The second round promised to be even tougher, as contestants were divided into teams and tasked with solving complex puzzles together. Ellie's team included 2 juniors she didn't know well and another senior named Priya, whose sharp analytical skills had earned her a reputation as a strong competitor. At first, there was some tension as the group tried to establish roles and delegate responsibilities. One of the juniors suggested diving straight into calculations, while Priya argued they needed to strategize before jumping in. Ellie listened quietly, observing the dynamic and waiting for her chance to contribute. When the discussion grew heated, Ellie finally spoke up. "Why don't we break the problem into smaller parts?" she suggested calmly. "That way we can assign sections based on our strengths and work more efficiently." Her teammates paused, considering her idea. After a brief silence, Priya nodded approvingly. "That's smart, let's give it a shot." With Ellie's plan in place, the team sprang into action. Each member tackled their assigned portion, communicating updates and sharing insights as they went. Ellie took charge of integrating the pieces, ensuring everything aligned seamlessly. By the time the deadline approached, they had crafted a cohesive solution that impressed the judges enough to secure their spot in the final round. As the finalists gathered on stage for the last challenge, the energy in the room reached a fever pitch. The audience leaned forward in their seats, eager to see how the top contenders would fare. The judges presented the final task: developing an original algorithm to optimize delivery routes for a hypothetical logistics company. Contestants had limited time to design, explain, and defend their proposals. Ellie sat at her workstation, her mind racing as she analyzed the problem. She knew speed and efficiency were key, but she also wanted her solution to stand out, not just for its complexity, but for its practicality. Drawing on years of experience assisting her parents with research projects, she devised an innovative approach that combined machine learning principles with traditional optimization techniques. Her algorithm accounted for variables like traffic, patterns, weather conditions, and fuel consumption, offering a comprehensive yet elegant solution. When it came time to present, Ellie stepped up to the microphone with quiet poise. She explained her methodology clearly, breaking down each component so even non-mathematicians could follow along. Her confidence grew as she spoke, fueled by the realization that she truly understood the material inside and out. When she finished, the judges exchanged approving glances, jotting notes and nodding appreciatively. Daniel, too, delivered a stellar presentation, proposing a slightly different take on the same problem. His solution emphasized scalability and adaptability, earning him enthusiastic applause from the audience. As the presentations wrapped up, it was clear that both Ellie and Daniel had raised the bar for everyone else. Backstage, as the judges deliberated, Ellie and Daniel crossed paths again. "Great job out there," he said with genuine admiration. "Your algorithm was brilliant." "You too," Ellie replied with a smile. "It's been fun competing against you." For a moment, they simply stood there, two unlikely rivals united by their shared passion for mathematics. Neither cared about the outcome anymore. They had already pushed themselves further than they ever imagined possible. Finally, the host returned to the stage to announce the winner. The tension in the room was palpable as names were read aloud for honorable mentions and runner-up positions. Then, with a dramatic pause, the host declared, "And the winner of this year's mathematics competition is Eleanor Carter." The auditorium erupted into cheers as Ellie froze, momentarily stunned. She hadn't expected to win, not when facing such talented opponents. But as reality sank in, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Stepping onto the stage to accept her trophy, she scanned the crowd and spotted Mia clapping wildly, tears streaming down her face. Even Dr. Grayson, seated near the front, offered a reluctant but unmistakable nod of approval. In that moment, Ellie realized something profound. Winning wasn't about proving herself to others. It was about embracing her potential and inspiring those around her. And though the spotlight wasn't her natural habitat, she now understood its power to illuminate paths for others who might otherwise remain unseen. The applause in the auditorium lingered long after Ellie stepped off the stage, clutching her trophy and trying to process what had just happened. The weight of her achievement settled over her slowly, like sunlight breaking through clouds on a gray day. She had entered the competition not to win but to challenge herself, to step out of her comfort zone and see how far she could go. Yet here she was, standing at the center of attention, her quiet brilliance finally recognized by everyone around her. As students and faculty members congratulated her, Ellie felt a mix of emotions: pride, relief, and even a touch of disbelief. For so long she had been content to stay in the background, letting her work speak for itself. But now she realized that sometimes actions needed words too. Words to inspire others, to show them that greatness isn't always loud or flashy. It can be subtle, steady, and unassuming, like the hum of a well-tuned engine working behind the scenes. Mia rushed up to her as soon as the ceremony ended, throwing her arms around Ellie in an exuberant hug. "I knew you could do it." "Mia," exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. "You were amazing out there." Ellie laughed softly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "Thanks, Mia. I couldn't have done it without your encouragement." "You did it all on your own," Mia countered firmly. "But hey, don't think this is the end. You've got big things ahead of you now. Internship offers, research opportunities, it's going to be incredible." Ellie nodded thoughtfully, though part of her still felt unsure about stepping fully into the limelight. Winning the competition meant more than just personal validation. It came with responsibilities she hadn't anticipated. People would look to her as a role model, someone who could pave the way for quieter voices to be heard. And while that idea excited her, it also made her nervous. Could she live up to those expectations? Her thoughts were interrupted when Dr. Grayson approached her, his expression unreadable but tinged with something resembling respect. "Well, Ms. Carter," he said, his tone measured but sincere, "you've certainly proven me wrong. Congratulations." Ellie met his gaze steadily, her calm demeanor unwavering. "Thank you, Professor. I appreciate the opportunity." Dr. Grayson hesitated for a moment, then added almost reluctantly, "Your performance today and throughout this semester has reminded me of something important. Talent doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes we have to listen carefully to hear it." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close enough. Ellie gave him a small, polite smile. "I'm glad you think so, sir. Maybe next time you won't underestimate someone so quickly." The comment caught Dr. Grayson off guard, and for a brief second his stern facade cracked into a hint of a grin. "Touché, Ms. Carter. Touché." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Ellie to reflect on their complicated dynamic. She didn't harbor any ill will toward him. If anything, she understood why he pushed his students so hard. His methods might have been harsh, but they had forced her to confront her own potential. In a strange way, she owed him a debt of gratitude. In the days following the competition, life on campus began to change for Ellie. Students who had once overlooked her now sought her out for advice or collaboration. Professors invited her to join research projects, recognizing her unique perspective and problem-solving abilities. Even strangers stopped her in the hallway to congratulate her or ask about her plans for the future. While the newfound attention took some getting used to, Ellie found joy in using her platform to help others. One afternoon, she sat down with a group of freshmen who had struggled in their introductory calculus course. They were bright students, eager to learn but intimidated by the competitive environment. As Ellie patiently explained concepts and offered tips for success, she saw glimpses of her younger self in their wide-eyed expressions. She remembered how isolating it had felt to navigate the academic world alone, and she vowed to make sure no one else had to feel that way. Remember, she told them gently, it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to take your time. What matters most is believing in yourself and trusting your instincts. You don't have to shout to be heard. Her words resonated deeply with the students, sparking conversations that extended beyond math into broader discussions about confidence, perseverance, and finding one's place in the world. Seeing their faces light up with newfound determination filled Ellie with a sense of purpose she hadn't expected. Meanwhile, Daniel reached out to collaborate on a project inspired by their shared experience in the competition. Together, they worked on refining algorithms for real-world applications, combining Ellie's theoretical expertise with Daniel's practical insights. Their partnership blossomed into a friendship built on mutual respect and admiration, proving that rivals could become allies when they shared a common goal. As for Dr. Grayson, he underwent a subtle transformation of his own. Though he remained as demanding as ever in his teaching style, there was a noticeable shift in how he interacted with his students. He seemed more willing to listen, to recognize individual strengths, rather than assuming everyone fit into a predetermined mold. Some whispered that Ellie's triumph had humbled him, forcing him to reevaluate his biases. Whether true or not, the change was undeniable and welcomed by many. By the time summer rolled around, Ellie had accepted the internship offer from the tech company that sponsored the competition. It was an exciting opportunity, one that promised to challenge her in new ways and expand her horizons. But before she left for her internship, she organized a workshop for aspiring mathematicians, inviting students from all levels to participate. Her message was simple yet powerful. Don't let anyone tell you who you are or what you're capable of. Let your passion guide you, and trust that your voice matters, even if it's soft. On her last day at the university, Ellie stood outside the lecture hall where it had all begun. The building loomed large, its walls echoing with memories of equations solved and lessons learned. She felt a pang of nostalgia, but also a surge of hope for the future. This chapter of her life was ending, but another was just beginning. One where she could continue to grow, inspire, and make a difference. As she walked away, her steps light and confident, Ellie knew she had accomplished far more than winning a competition. She had shattered stereotypes, challenged perceptions, and shown the world that brilliance comes in many forms. Quiet strength, she realized, wasn't a weakness. It was a superpower, and hers was only just getting started.